guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're a returning subscriber, then thank you for joining me for another video, and if you're brand new here, welcome to my channel. Please make sure that you hit that subscribe button and make sure to hit the bell notification to know when I upload a new video, and let's get straight into the video. So first things first, I need you guys to get a little drink. Today I have a nice little green tea because it's not everyday cocktail. I'm not an alcoholic. Got a cute little green tea. Make sure you pick up whatever snack you need as well, and we'll get straight into the video. Today's video is going to focus on my story time of how I was able to purchase my property. I'm going to split it into about 3 different parts just so that it's not like one huge massive video. So the first part is going to talk about my journey up until me getting my mortgage. The second part of the video will focus on the process between the mortgage and exchanging of contracts, and then the third part is going to focus on the last leg of the journey, which was the journey between exchange of contracts and completion. This story time is going to start about a couple of months before I actually made the reservation for the property. So I made the reservation in December 2019, but if I take it back to about September time 2019, that's when I started actually looking at houses and trying to understand whether or not I could actually put myself forward to purchasing a house. That was just me understanding what the market was like. I was not ready that year to purchase a house. If you told me that year, yeah Lorraine, you're gonna purchase a house this year or next year, I'd just look at you like, okay, cool. I was just curious. Like, I'm so nosy. I love going on to Zoopla and Rightmove and like looking at the mansions, looking at my future dream house and everything like that. But at this point in time, I was actually being quite practical and looking at things that I believed would be kind of feasible for myself. My main criteria was to look within kind of like the London area or like just the outskirts of London. I didn't really want to go anywhere beyond that, mainly because I needed to get access into London for work purposes and things like that. During my search, I'm not gonna lie to you, the prices of the properties were insane. I'm based in southeast London, and yeah, the properties around this area had just skyrocketed like out of the clear blue sky. Even the like very outskirts of London, it was like still pretty pricey. At the time, my understanding of Help to Buy was that you have the opportunity to buy a property with only a 5% deposit. That was my sole understanding of Help to Buy. On my end, I maybe should have done a bit more research into it, but that's just what I had in mind. And so that meant that if I was to buy a property with a 5% deposit, the other 95% would have to come from a mortgage. And with the way mortgages work, I mentioned this in my previous video, it's based on your salary. So what they do is they multiply your salary by about 4.5 times, depending on kind of the rate and the lender that you go to, and that gives you an estimate as to how much they're willing to lend you. When I did this with my current salary, this was my second job out of university, which I also mentioned in my previous video. Even though my salary had increased, it still wasn't enough to cover the 95% loan to value mortgage that I would need to buy these properties. And so I googled again. I was like trying to understand a bit more about Help to Buy, because I was like this 5% deposit thing like sounds great, but I don't see how this is helping so many people purchase properties. Like, it just wasn't making sense. And so when I did my further research, always do your research guys, that's when I came to understand about the Help to Buy equity loan, which is essentially what the scheme is. So the scheme does have the 5% deposit, so the minimum amount of deposit that you are required to put forward is 5%, which is great. And then also alongside that, you are offered a loan from the government. If you're purchasing a property within London, it's 40% of the value of the property, and if you're buying outside of London, it's 20% of the value of the property, which means that when you now go for the mortgage, instead of getting a 95% loan to value mortgage, you're getting a 55% loan to value mortgage. If you're purchasing within London, you're getting a 75% loan to value mortgage for properties outside of London. While I was doing the research, that's when I stumbled across the Help to Buy calculator. So what I did, I put my details in there. So that helped me to understand how much I was able to look at in terms of the value of the property. Also during this time, there were new builds that would be constructed down the road from me. So at this point, they'd been in construction for about just over a year. So I was well aware of the construction, but I had absolutely like no interest or no desire to kind of look into it for myself, mainly because it was literally 5 minutes from my house. I didn't see the point of moving so close to home when I was very comfortable living at home. This all happened in September, so fast forward to December. Literally one day I was just in the shopping centre and I was walking back home, and on my way back home I passed the new build construction. I saw a sign where they were opening up their showrooms for the first time, so that was their first day, taking people in and showing them the showroom apartments. Me and my parents are really interested in kind of like property and things like that, so I called them up. I was like, hey guys, they're doing a showroom, do you guys want to like take a look? And because literally my house is like a 5-minute walk, they just came over, we went in, because it was just walk-ins at this point. This was pre-COVID. We go in, I have absolutely no like preconceived idea about any of the properties that we're going to see. I'm literally just going in to A, be curious, and B, be nosy to see kind of the interior design, because I was obsessed. I still am, but I was really getting into kind of interior decor, interior design. I wanted to kind of see what the showroom looked like. We go into the showroom and I'm like so impressed. The finishes of the property are so good. It was decorated so nicely. It just looked really good. It was quite spacious. So we saw 2 1-bedroom apartments that were very different layouts, but they were both like quite spacious. They had a decent balcony. It just looked really good. And on paper, the actual property itself fits the criteria that I would look for with regards to my own apartment. So it was really close to the shops. It was literally across the road from the shopping centre. It has really good transport links. It's close to like a main road where I can access London really quickly. So it was actually ticking a lot of the boxes that I was looking for when I was looking at other properties. When we were given kind of the list of properties that were available for Help to Buy, the prices that I was seeing were within the budget that I was seeing when I first looked at the Help to Buy calculator. That started getting me thinking about considering this as somewhere for myself to live. Just another note about the Help to Buy properties: when a development advertises that they offer Help to Buy, that doesn't mean that they offer Help to Buy for every single unit within that development. It's only a selected number of units that are actually eligible for the Help to Buy. And so what I was provided on the day was like an A4 sheet of paper, and that had every single plot that was available under the Help to Buy. So that included 1 beds, 2 beds and 3 beds. And I was only looking at 1 beds because those were the properties that matched my kind of price point. There was literally only about 10, I would say, within the 1-bedroom range. I was shown the properties, a lot of them had already been kind of reserved. Bearing in mind this was the very first day that the showroom had opened, quite a lot of the properties had already gone off, so it showed how much of an interest these properties have. So it was really much a case of like it's now or never kind of thing. I had a brief conversation with my parents about it from an equity standpoint, to kind of have equity into the property, and then also just to get my foot on the property ladder. Like I said to you before this, I had absolutely no strong desire to move out on my own, but when this opportunity came about, it was just ticking so many boxes and it was just making a lot of sense. And so on that very same day is when I put down the £500 for the reservation. So the next step was for the developer to determine whether or not I'm eligible in terms of affordability. What they do is they provide you with one of their own mortgage brokers, and the mortgage broker does their assessment to determine whether or not you fit the affordability, and therefore you're eligible to carry on with the process of purchasing the property. My advice is to always go with your own mortgage broker, mainly because the mortgage broker that they provided have the development's interests at heart. So when you put yourself forward for the affordability, if for any reason you don't meet the criteria, instead of them kind of giving you advice or shedding light or giving you, help towards maybe being able to meet the affordability, they'll essentially just write you off as someone who can't purchase the property because they're trying to protect the developers. Whereas myself, I opted to go for my own mortgage advisor. So this was someone who was actually trusted within the family. She's helped my parents buy properties, she's helped other family members buy properties, and she was going to give me all the support and advice needed in order to meet the affordability, in order to get the mortgage. When she did her assessment, this was sent over to the developers and they accepted it, which meant that I met their affordability criteria and I was able to move forward with the decision in principle. But what a decision in principle is it acts as essentially the first green light from the mortgage lender to say, based on the information you've provided us, we'd be happy to provide you this mortgage, but obviously this is subject to them doing kind of further check on yourself as well as on the property itself before they're actually able to offer you the mortgage. The information that I had to provide, I gave it through my mortgage advisor. Essentially this was the value of the property, so the property price, any additional charges, so like the annual service charge that they would be charging, the ground rent, and then also the price of the car park space. So I sent that information to her. Then also I had to provide 3 months worth of bank statements, 3 months worth of pay slips, and also a credit report. This is why my previous video I said that I basically entered quite late in the game, because in hindsight I should have prepared myself so that my bank statements looked as credible and as healthy as possible prior to sending them over to get this assessment. But because I hadn't done that, they weren't in kind of the best conditions. Like I was like spending a bit more than I usually would, but they were still pretty decent. Like a good chunk of the money was leaving my account in terms of like savings and things like that. Essentially the bank statements are to see your income coming in, kind of how much money you're getting in, how you essentially spend your money, and what you're left with at the end of each month. I sent those off and I was able to get a decision in principle from a really credible high street lender, and this was in January 2020. So this was 1 month after I'd put my reservation down. So at this stage I'm really happy. Things are going surprisingly well. I say surprisingly because, like I keep saying, I was not really ready at all to buy a house. If I'm being very honest, even speaking to my parents about it at the time, I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I should just wait. I feel like I haven't got myself together enough for me to go forward with this process. But my dad said to me, opportunities like this, they don't come about. You're never really 100% ready to purchase a property or for the right opportunity to come or for the right property to come. And as I said, this property ticked every single box that I was looking for if I was to move out of my house. The only thing is that it was very close to home, but that was a fact that I was willing to overlook. I was just like, okay, maybe this is a sign, this makes sense, like let's go for it. I was really happy, really ecstatic. When the decision in principle came, one of the conditions that needed to be met within this decision in principle was that my debt essentially needed to be zero. Because my salary just about met the threshold, this meant that I didn't have wiggle space for any kind of monthly debts that I needed to pay off. At this point, the debt that I had was my car. My car was on finance, so I was paying a monthly payment for my car. The second one was a credit card. So this I got as soon as I left university to help build my credit. And the third thing was my laptop. So when I started my second job, I got a brand new laptop and I did this on 0% finance because personally, I don't like when a huge chunk of money leaves my account. It makes me very nervous. So I was essentially paying it off monthly with 0% interest, so it just made sense to me at the time. And again, it was just helping me build my credit score. And I also had an overdraft from my graduate account, and my overdraft was about £500, so that also had to be paid off. So my credit card, I paid it off every single month, so that wasn't a problem. With having a credit card, it means you have access to finance, and that is seen as debt. And so I had to essentially just cancel my credit card so that I no longer had access to that credit. Then the next thing to pay off was my overdraft, which I was able to pay off as well. And then also my laptop, I was able to pay that off too. So the last thing that needed to be paid off, which was essentially the biggest kind of debt in my name, was my car finance. I'd paid off everything else up until about March. So between January and March, I was able to pay off all those lines of credit. What was left was my car finance. My plan for that was to essentially just sell my car. The plan was to essentially sell the car and then just buy it again or buy a different car at the end of the process. So once I'd completed on the house. However, Miss Rona decided to come and completely just ruin everyone's plans. COVID hit at the exact time that I was getting ready to sell my car, which was quite a disaster because all of the kind of car selling websites that I wanted to use, they weren't doing kind of any valuations of the car, so that I wasn't able to essentially put them on those websites. My thinking at the time was, we're literally entering this pandemic, lockdown. I think lockdown was either that week or it was coming soon. It was approaching, and so the last thing that I think people would want to do at a time like that was to buy a car. Selling this car was crucial in order for me to obtain my mortgage. So in my mind I was thinking, okay, this is a sign that I'm not meant to go through with this then, because there's no way I'm going to be able to pay off this car loan within the time frame that I needed to pay it off. I needed to get my kind of mortgage offer as soon as possible, because at the time my completion date was July of 2020. I was really eager to get the mortgage offer set in stone because other processes also needed to happen in the meantime. I just took it as a sign, maybe like this is just the wrong time. Maybe I've just, at this point I felt like I was like skating on thin ice, and I was really testing whether or not this was really kind of right for me. And at this time I'd paid for the 500 reservation, I paid 650 for the mortgage advisor, and I'd paid off about about 2,500 in terms of debt towards this property. I still had a decent amount of savings left over, and my parents were really invested in me purchasing this property. They kind of really saw it as a really golden opportunity, and so the agreement we came to was that we would split it in half in terms of the car payment. So there was about £7,000 left to pay on the car, and so I would put 3,500 and my parents would put 3,500. That would clear the debt of the car. The 3,500 that came from my parents came as a loan, so that was to be paid back, which, you know, is happening right now. And when I was able to do that, by the grace of God, I was able to kind of pay off my car payments. On my end, at this point, I had done everything that I needed to do with regards to making sure that I was in the best position to get the final mortgage offer. The issue was that on the bank's end, there were a lot of processes that they needed to go through, but because of COVID, everything was taking ages. Like when I say ages, like a very long time. One of the main things that the bank needs to do is actually go to the property and value it. So they need to value it with their own kind of process to make sure that the price of the property that's being sold is worth what it's being put forward as. However, like I said, because of COVID, this took many weeks when it should have taken essentially maybe a couple of weeks max. The back and forth between myself and the mortgage advisor and the bank was constant. Like it was a constant back and forth. This caused many issues, many problems, but somehow I was able to secure my mortgage. I will go into depth of how I was able to secure that mortgage in my next video, and I'll also go into essentially all the steps that I needed to take leading up to me exchanging contracts. I want to thank you guys so much for staying tuned, and thank you so much for watching to the end of the video, and hope to see you in my next video. Bye guys.